School District is called to order. This is our board workshop being held this December 17th, 2019. We have a quorum with everyone present, so we can get started on our agenda items, Dr.
Thank you, Madam President. The first agenda item is that we ask the Board of Trustees to ratify the financial investment reports as presented. The second agenda item, we ask the Board of Trustees to consider approval of budget amendment request. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the second reading of Policy Update 113. And if you will recall, there were some questions regarding the updates, and we've added the explanatory notes that hopefully will help a little bit with that. But on second reading, Thursday night, the Board will actually approve these.
Can I ask questions? Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. Okay. And I apologize for the budget part. I didn't ask any questions, but there was a lot to do. There was a lot of paper things. On page 28, I just wanted a clarification at the very bottom when it's talking about the federal accountability. The last sentence where it's talking about for school-wide programs, targeted assistant schools, where appropriate educational services outside the school district. It says for children living in local institutions or attending community day school programs. What are day school programs?
What policy are you referencing?
Aid at the very legal.
Right here at the bottom.
Page 1.
Accountability, federal.
Aid legal.
Aid
legal. Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll refer to it that way.
Community day school programs would be we have a couple of if we had students that were in arrangements for special services that we do not provide, but they're at a school that provides other services. We really only maybe have 1 or 2 students a year in that type of situation.
So are they in the district, or do you take them somewhere else?
Many times they're outside of the district,
okay,
but they are residents of the district.
Okay. Thank you. On page 29, the BDD local, Board Internal Organization Attorney. I've never questioned that. It says in the first 2 paragraphs, recommended changes reflect that many law firms use an engagement letter rather than a written agreement or contract to establish the fees and expenses of their services. Which one do we have?
Engagement.
And do I understand that if we should happen to talk to them or anything, that we are billed?
Every time
we go
you
through
pick
you
the phone
first
up and talk to them, they
okay.
get a little button.
Yeah. Time-wise, we're turning it off.
And they do it by the quarter. I'm just...
No, but that's a process that if we needed to, we go through you first.
Yes, ma'am. The staff does that as well, and that's not to keep anyone from visiting with the attorney, but it's to kind of have a clearinghouse, so to speak, because if you can just imagine if everybody's calling the attorney, the only way that I know about it then is that when the bill comes in, I take and go through, and they will put the initial out of whoever it is that they talk with.
Okay. Okay, that was I'll skip that one. On page 33, and I think we've discussed this before, but I just want to, because it's from TASB, about the special ed video audio. It's EHBAF. On the videoing, Are all the special ed classrooms videoed, or is this at the request of the principal?
It's at the request of the principal, or it could be a request from a parent as well as a board member, but not necessarily just from the principal.
Okay, so TASB's not saying that we have to do it in every location?
No.
Okay. And then on 34, I got curious, but when I read further on, the child abuse training, okay, that's going to be FFG legal. I guess I should ask this later on about the training. I'll skip that page. The training later on is a deal about the school board is needing to have training on trafficking that I wasn't aware of, and that all teachers are to have child abuse training. And I wasn't aware. Well, I've got it further where it talks about the school board, actually. That we are supposed to have 2 hours of training, no, every 2 years, 1 hour of training for trafficking and sexual abuse. I wasn't aware of
I
that.
think that's new legislation.
It's new, and I think they haven't given us all the information.
And because that's under legal, that is, at some point, we would have to come up with, if we would be addressing it differently through local, and then have to run that back to TASB. I don't see any reason why we would, but that would be how it would be.
They're still waiting for that information.
Okay, so we're not going to be approving that. Okay, and then on page 36, and I was reading this about the attendance boundary.
Is that the next thing?
Oh, no, have I gone on?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the
Yeah,
next
you're
thing.
actually at the next.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to make this short for you guys. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Maybe.
I do have a couple questions. Dr. Randall, on local policy COB, last time.
What page is
What
that?
page?
So I'm looking at the one from the last board book.
Okay, it's on page 32.
32. It says in there, with funds from the Federal Community Eligibility Provision, CEP, the district shall provide regular meal service to students at no cost, as authorized by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Has there been any clarification on whether adding this would mean that we would have to provide it to every student in the district? Because it doesn't necessarily say to students that are eligible for it, or it just says the district shall provide regular meal service to students at no cost.
They're really referencing following the federal guidelines, which means that we could not offer it to everybody if it didn't meet the requirements.
Okay.
And the CEP is, we have, I think, 18 schools right now that meet that requirement, but that's the only way that we can offer it to all of the kids at the school.
Okay. And then my second question was on local policy, the CRB. This is recommended for deletion. This is purely a recommendation from TASB, though, and so the board could amend the request on Thursday. Would that require another first and second reading, or could we amend it and then approve it as amended?
The which one is it again?
CRB.
CRB, page 32.
So if, for example, there was an amendment to keep this provision, would we have to start the entire process over with first reading, second reading? Or could we amend it, keep this included, and then approve it for final?
The recommendation that I would make is that if you wanted to change this, you would make that recommendation and have our attorneys review it before you take final action on it, which would mean that you would at least make the recommendation, carry over to the next meeting, and then you can approve a policy on first reading. The board can do that without, and you're basically suspending the first reading and second reading, and then you could do it all in one reading. But I would recommend that any time that you are doing something like that, where this is not saying that we don't already have coverage for the board. We have coverage for the board, and it's not eliminating that. But I would just say at the meeting on Thursday, you make that recommendation and then allow Rick to review the recommendation and come back in January for first reading and approval.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But would we pull this and just, or you just vote on this and then
You would pull CRB
and vote on the
and
rest?
vote on the rest.
Okay.
And then you could whatever motion you wanted to make, and then have the attorneys review it.
And then once that comes, either we would come back and vote
Then
on
you come
it,
back and vote
or
on-
vote on what we changed.
That's correct. And then
It'd be a first and second reading of
and
that.
then it goes to TASB. They'll get loaded up and come back again.
So it takes a few months to get taken care of. Okay.
I have a question. Mr. Hunt had two of mine, so thank you for that. But this, one of the things about the layout about this book is very confusing, is that this is the second reading for update 113, and the policies themselves are not included in this book, and it's already over 400 pages. But in the back of this book, on update 114, you have the same explanatory notes, plus the current policy, plus the current policy again color-coded with the changes. So it seems like we're being redundant in some places. It seems like on the second reading you could have included the current policy with the colored changes in the notes, and it would have been a lot easier when we're going back to read why the policies are recommended to be changed. We wouldn't have to go back to last month's board book.
Well, if you typically we had not put the explanatory notes in, but there were questions asked the last time, and if you recall, Dr. Bowen pulled the explanatory notes and discussed those. So we decided to, from now on moving forward, we will have the explanatory notes and the update, which will have both the current policy and the changes, so that you can look at because some of the reasons that they're changing is purely legislative updates, purely. Doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing locally. And so then the reason you have update 114, we don't always get them all at the same time. We'll get 113, we'll get 114, and there'll be another update. And during a legislative session, they are going through and trying to update as much of those policies as quickly as they can, and so sometimes they don't all come at the same time. So that's why you actually got them both this quickly. Normally, there's 3 or 4 months in between these updates.
That raises another question about the local policy. Is the local policy not generated from the policy committee?
Not well.
Because that would make the most sense, that we want to put a local policy in place. The legal policy is not necessary from the local perspective, because TASB tells us what the state legislature has mandated, and that is a legal policy that we have no control over. But the local policy, from what I understand, the 7 of us can change that.
You can change it. That's correct.
So at what point is that language ever generated by the policy committee?
If there's something that's not a policy, I don't know what that would be, but if you came up with a policy that the board wanted to implement, that the superintendent can't wear a tie to a meeting. If you decided that you wanted to do that, you would actually ask that we generate that, and you go through the board policy committee, and then the board policy committee ultimately would then bring that to the board for a recommendation. All right? Now, once you do that, and if it passes, then it becomes a part of the local policy,
Right.
which means that 5 years from now, a new board may come on board, and they're going to see that local policy that's there, and they may decide that they want to change that. And that's how you would react to it.
I was under the impression that everything that I read in the current policy that is deemed local was generated by a previous board. But it sounds like most of it's been generated by TASB.
Well, a few years ago, there were 3 of us that got through, and we went through, like you just recently did, went through every policy, and we took a couple out, and we recreated 3. Once we did that, we sent it over to our lawyers to fix it before we brought it to the board. And then once we brought it to the board, of our recommendations of some new policies, then they had to have the 2 readings, and then we voted on it. But it was us getting together, deciding we would go through as a policy committee to see what it was relevant and what we needed to update and what we needed to change. And some of it was just a word or 2. But anytime you even do a word or 2, you have to.
So that brings me to one other question for page 31, CI local. And Mr. Hunt asked this last meeting, and I think the wording is still there. There's wording that talks about being able to sell district personal property. And that word personal was raised last month, and that still catches me this month, and I don't understand it. Can you give us an example of district personal property?
We own the property that's right across from the Trailer Stadium. It's land that's there. That's considered district personal property.
That's not considered district property. District personal property. It's the word personal that's throwing me.
I don't know how to respond to that. When we hear the term personal and district, it is one and the same as far as we're concerned. And as far as the language of it, that might be a good question to ask Rick, and I'll ask him about that so that he can have maybe a better explanation for you on Thursday.
I appreciate that.
Just wanted to go back very briefly to the first thing that Mr. Wells brought up. I think what you were trying to get across was just on the policy manual update 113, that it just has the explanatory notes. It doesn't have the current and revised redline versions. It just might be helpful in future second readings if we could have the redlined versions in here, so that way we don't have to also have last month's board book with us too.
Once upon a time, didn't we get yellow sheets? It was not even in the board book. Once upon a time, I think.
Well, the board book almost got there this time. It gets to a point where you have to start breaking it up.
Yeah.
And so there are some times that we'll take and have it, we'll tell you that it's under separate cover. And then just provide a additional, because you have some documents even now that's been provided under separate cover and it's not a part of the book.
And that might be something to look for, so that if we're going to do a double reading.
But I think that we've already kind of addressed the question, because moving forward we will have both the explanatory notes and right behind it, because we felt like that would be helpful as you study the books. So.
Any other questions or comments? You ready to move forward? Thank you.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the membership of the Attendance Boundary Committee. And you have a list of recommendations.
I have a question. It's on the zoning timeline, and I do appreciate the fact that from the old zoning timeline, the meetings were moved from Brazos Crossing to Lindsay Elementary. But I do see on January 30th, when the public input section is, that's going to be at Lehman Junior High. The only school that's affected by Cameron Elementary opening is Lindsay Elementary. So to me, it seems like it would make the most sense to have the public input portion be at Lindsay Elementary, if at all possible, because to get from Lindsay to Lehman at 6 o'clock at night can sometimes take 30, 40 minutes.
We typically go to a larger venue. Now, hopefully we won't have a whole bunch of people that would be coming. But the idea has been that we've gone just to a larger venue, and Lehman has a larger auditorium, for that purpose. But that's been basically how we've approached it in the past.
I mean, I would recommend the Lindsay Elementary cafeteria. I've been in meetings in there, and there's been a couple hundred people I just think it would make more sense if we're trying to encourage the public to come to these meetings to have it at the one school that's getting affected.
Certainly, if the campus doesn't already have something scheduled on that date, we can do that. This is one of the more unique attendance boundary committees. Typically, we have multiple elementary campuses, and so we do go to a secondary site and kind of bring everyone together. But considering that Lindsay Elementary is the only impacted campus, that is also why we moved the meetings from this facility over to Lindsay. So if the campus didn't have an issue there, it could be done.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just, when I looked at the representatives, why do we have more from the junior high and the high school rather than it's affecting the elementary? How is it affecting the high school or the junior high that we have more representatives from them?
Right. So that's traditional for every elementary zoning process, and so we followed the LCISD board zoning process. And the board zoning process every single time includes 2 representatives from any impacted elementary school, 2 representatives from any impacted middle school, and then 3 representatives from both any impacted junior high and high school. And so all of our elementary committees have that makeup, whether it's an elementary or a secondary zoning. And the only time it would really expand beyond that would be, say, when we have like a secondary zoning. That includes every single campus in the district.
Like when we get Randall High
Yes,
School
ma'am.
and that, it'll be larger,
Yes, ma'am.
more
So-
representatives.
So we're simply following the board zoning process that we've utilized with some success over recent years for Lindsay Elementary, now for Tamron Elementary again.
If we wanted to go to 3 representatives from those elementary schools, what would be the process?
The board would look at the LCISD board-approved zoning process and change it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
The next item is consider approval of resolution proclaiming Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. The next item is discussion and action on board, that the board will discuss and take possible action on board meeting video live production upgrades.
I have a question.
Next,
Yeah, we're going to discuss which one we like right now, or we're going to wait
you would do that Thursday.
Thursday
You
night?
can only ask questions tonight. Discussion will be Thursday.
Okay, then I guess I'll put it into a question.
It's Jeopardy.
I like it.
Well, under the live streaming, it was talking about it wouldn't require additional duties for a current employee. Is that correct? I've been watching too much TV. I just said that. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Ms. Kaminsky.
I was trying to figure out what the advantage would be to the live streaming versus the live production as far as cost, but also time consuming.
So the live streaming option just gave an option that with our current setup, we could flip a switch essentially, and I'm really probably messing up the technical term, but we could flip a switch and we could live stream how it looks right now. With the live production, that would also have some different camera angles, and if the board was interested, once we got that process set up, if we moved to that, we could then also do a live streaming version as well. And so live streaming would be, we'd find a conduit, whether it would be typically we do live streaming for our graduations on our district YouTube channel. And so right now you could go into the district website, go to the board page, and there would be basically a box there, and it would flip live, and you could watch online during the meetings. That would be live streaming, and we could do that right now if the board wished. But if we adjust with any of these other options, that would also be included in those options.
But in live production, it says that it will require additional duties for a current employee.
Yes, ma'am. It would require someone at a computer to toggle or switch between different camera angles. So in that option, we would probably add a camera either directly in front of me or off to the side. We would also plug in a switch into the computer over here. So if you were showing a PowerPoint presentation, that individual would then toggle between seeing me talking right now, seeing you ask the question, seeing something on the screen. And so someone would have to be here and designated to do that.
And then they, afterwards, they have to go back to it and.
Actually, that's the benefit of that version, is that in real time, let's say the board meeting lasts 45 minutes or 3 hours. Once that is complete, we would then just upload that version that has been toggled between. If you were to do a post-production with multiple camera angles, it would probably take that individual perhaps 3 or 4 times as long as the actual board meeting to try and go through and pick different angles. So both of those options require some additional duties, but the live production option is probably the less impactful for an additional employee.
But if you did live, you could do the live streaming of a live production.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
right?
ma'am.
So that if we put the extra cameras up, you could see what was going on, and then that's already ready to go load up for everybody else to see it later.
I guess, Ms. Kaminsky, you're trying to figure out how much additional time.
Yeah, the
it would
time
take
and having another
staff
employee.
person. That person would have to be here for the entire length of the meeting, and they would be switching back and forth from one camera to the other. Like I'm talking now, they switch it to me. When Mike starts talking, they'll switch to this camera, and so that you can see his face. That person would have to stay here if the meeting is an hour, for an hour and a half probably, to do all of the stuff for preparation before and after. If it's a 5-hour meeting, they'd have to stay for the entire time. So that's the amount of actual additional time that it would require.
Well, my concern for right now is, why do we need all the different angles? I mean, some people that come up here and want to talk are having a hard enough time talking to us, and knowing that they're going to be viewed from all angles. It's kind of like a TV type thing. I just want them to be comfortable.
Good question.
But this goes to the discussion part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the question. If I'm at home watching right now, listening to Mr. Rockwood, I would have a hard time seeing your face and your expressions. Is that not correct, Mr. Rockwood?
That's correct. What you see online currently, if we were to live stream that right now, you would see what you see when you go to the board page. So it would be the camera in the back. We'd see all of your smiling faces in the back of my head.
So also,
You can put a camera back.
so if you were to turn and give us a presentation or talk about a presentation on the screen, the people watching feed could not see that presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct. They could not see the presentation during the live video.
The way it's currently set up.
Correct.
And this is we would decide, or would we, it would be both workshop and board meetings, so it would be Tuesday and Thursday nights. It wouldn't just be at a board meeting. Is that a decision we'd have to make, or is that if we do one, we have to do the other? Or is that something we'll discuss on Thursday?
You would probably discuss it on Thursday, but I'm not sure that the public would see one thing one night and then something else the next night.
I understand. That's why I'm just asking that question, because so you're not just talking about someone that needs to be here one.
Yeah, I had thought about that.
Okay.
And just to clarify, we're not going to bring a camera crew in here. We're adding
Another
potentially one camera here so they can see
And
your
you-
face,
right.
and then either one camera here to see the screen or something that you can just connect to the computer.
That's correct.
So one or two cameras.
And the person doing it would only be in somewhere inconspicuously doing it. It's not somebody up in anybody's face.
Yes,
correct?
ma'am. That's correct.
And then we do have an additional cost. I mean, it doesn't sound like a whole lot, but that $9,000
That's also correct.
also, okay.
There's
Plus
a
the
question
equipment.
right over here.
I was going to add to what John was saying, that, Mr. Wells, excuse me, when the kids or anybody does a presentation here, if somebody's watching live, it would be nice for them to see their faces, not just, you know what I mean? I know it's nerve-wracking for somebody to stand there, but all the presentations we get to see, and all anybody would see is the backs. So I think that would be another benefit to having an extra camera.
I think the question is, how intrusive is it, and making sure that it's not. And that would be something we would discuss on Thursday.
Well, this is a public meeting, so are we, and is that, if they can see so they see them walk in and out anyways, right?
No, I'm just saying that's something we can talk about more on Thursday, how it would work. But I think the main thing is that my question was making sure, how do we make sure that we're not being intrusive to the people that are here and knowing, and by just putting cameras up and having somebody in the back flipping switches, you don't have somebody, like you said, in somebody's face, so they don't feel like a camera person.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yes, right.
But those are questions that are very between cost and manpower.
Well, manpower, I'm more concerned about having to require somebody else to be here to do that. I don't know how important that really is.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
We'll move forward, and we'll have more discussion on that on Thursday.
Okay, the next item, we ask the board to approve the purchase of 25 new buses from Thomas Bus Gulf Coast in the amount of $2.8 million.
Question? Go ahead.
Clarify, and I think I've asked this time before, but the 177 passenger lift bus.
Yes. That's something new that we're going to try. Several times a year, we'll have a group of regular gen ed students that are going to go on a trip, but they have one wheelchair student that's going to go with them, and those could fit on one bus. But the way that we're configured now, they'd have to take two buses, because none of the big buses that could accommodate that number of, say, 2 classrooms of students are going, they'd have to take 2 buses. This bus will allow us to take the whole group, including one wheelchair student, to the zoo or whatever they're going to do, and avoid having us take 2 buses. The rest of the time, we'll use that bus as another trip bus, and most of the groups that are going, the athletic teams, it's going to cause us to lose a few seats for the wheelchair space, but they'll have equipment that they can put back there, and we can tie down in that
So you'll be
spot.
utilizing it.
Oh, yeah,
all
it'll
through
be
okay.
going every week.
There is what are the white, they're not called vans, but they look like, oh dear. It's a white, it's somewhere in here, they're talking about white vans for special ed. We have any white vans?
What you may have seen is maybe in our informational report that comes up each quarter, when we talk about the white fleet, those are like our expeditions and vans that, and what that's included in is just our mileage report that shows you how many miles those things run. Typically, those are used for teachers and small groups, like maybe a golf team going to a regional golf game. They'll take those. And then we also use some of those white fleet vehicles to do some of our McKinney-Vento kids, where we're taking kids to Waller or to Pasadena or downtown Houston that were still attending school here. Or sometimes we have students that are in other districts. Maybe we've got a lot of kids now in Houston ISD that are staying in this district, and we have to the 2 districts have to share transportation, and we use those small vehicles for that if we're just moving 1 or 2 kids for a long distance.
I noticed it being used for special ed a couple of times, so I was curious about the white vans, if that would be something we're going to be looking to purchasing later on.
We have some of those, and we purchase those and try to maintain that fleet. We'll buy a few of those each year just to keep that fleet maintained.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, question. And I don't know if this is the right way to ask this question, but it relates to page 400, when it talks about the remaining $244,471 is going to come out of the transportation operating budget. Can we use part of the 2006 $1.25 million so it doesn't have to come out of the operating budget?
I think what we've done, there were transportation amounts or money set aside in the last bonds for 2017, 2014, and 2011. And we've used up those funds with the last purchase that we did this time last year. There were some remaining either 11 or 14 funds that we used. So that left us a little bit of money from the first bond sale from 2017. And the little bit that was left from that first sale we used
with this purchase from the second sale, and what we needed left over, we're using that $244,000 is from our local budget.
So, but what I'm asking is, instead of using it from our local budget, we have, now in the packet, it says we have $1.25 million left over from the 2006 fund. Can we use that instead of using the funds out of the operating budget?
I would imagine that those funds were designated for something else.
I think those are available
Jill,
funds,
please
correct?
forgive me.
No, that's all right. I was debating on whether I should step up. Okay, so available funds are funds remaining after all projects are closed.
Right.
Technically, what we've done as a school district is to bring before the board recommendations to use available funds. So yes, the answer is we could choose to do that, but we would bring that to you for permission to use those funds and redirect them from, whatever projects they originally were designated for.
And can the board recommend what those funds are for as well?
Typically, the recommendations come from administration, but of course, we do work as a team. So.
Yes, the board can
They could, yes.
Make those recommendations. I think what Jill is referencing is that what we've tried to do is that their budget should allocate a normal maintenance and upgrades of types of vehicles and that type of thing. Ideally, there's no way that we can buy all the buses that we need from their regular operating budget. But when they have dollars available, they use it to augment the other buses that they're purchasing. Did I say that right? Augment? That's okay. All right. But anyway, that is what they're trying to do here. But yes, they could take and you could use available funds however the way the board decides that they want to use it.
Okay, thank you.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the request for a proposal of construction manager at risk for Lamar Consolidated High School, Lamar Junior High School Project 1, and Terry High School and George Junior High Project 2 for the interior-exterior additions and renovations to Dramala Construction Company in the amount of $60,000, pre-construction service, plus construction management at risk, and the general condition fees. In the impact rationale, the general condition fees are referenced. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the deductive change order number 1 in the amount of $280,902.60 and final payment of $297,356.67 to Hellis Construction for the construction of the synthetic turf sports fields and tracks, and authorize the board president to sign the change order. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the design development for the multi-campus carpet replacement and renovations as presented by Corrigan Associates, and we have a presentation for the board.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Randall, I would like to introduce to you Mr. A.J. Sesteta with Corrigan Architects, who is going to be presenting the design development that Dr. Randall just mentioned.
Thank you, Dr. Randall, Madam President, Board of Trustees. I'm going to go over the multi-campus carpet replacement and renovation package that we have for design development. So an overview of what we're looking at, package 1 is the carpet replacement. We are doing a 1-for-1 carpet replacement at Briscoe Junior High, Foster High School, Jackson Elementary School, Jane Long, and Pink Elementary. A 1-to-1 means wherever there's existing carpet, we're going to be replacing that with new throughout each campus listed. Package 2, multi-campus improvements in HVAC control scope. We're going to go over interior renovations at Austin, parking renovations at Bowie, and interior renovations as well. Jackson, we've got some site improvements as well as some drainage issues. Smith, renovation of a current courtyard. Taylor Ray, site improvement, and then HVAC controls across 11 campuses for the district. So carpet replacement, here's an example of some of the finishes that we have looked at with each respective stakeholder in campus. We're also going to be proposing a refresh of the library stacks on each school that's receiving new carpet. These stacks will be mobile, and they'll have skirts on the bottom so that they'll look seamless when they're sitting on the floor. Austin Elementary. So this is the plan as it currently stands right now. There's a small entrance vestibule that's unsecure. You enter the school before you get checked in and cleared. And there's also issues with the layout of the admin that we've worked with Mr. Weileman and his staff on. So here are our proposed renovations. We're expanding the lobby space, adding a small touchdown area for a receptionist to check in parents, visitors as they come into the school. Back there in the admin, we're rearranging the spaces so that principal, AP can have a conference room that's shared amongst them, reception in the middle, registrar adjacent to the reception, and then we're giving them back storage that we're displacing with the interior renovations. Bowie Elementary. We're doing a canopy refresh for the main entrance of the school. This is how it stands currently today. So we're going back with a refreshed look of a pre-engineered metal canopy. We're going to use brick column wraps that match the existing cladding of the building. We're also adding 46 new parking spaces to the campus. You can see looking northeast, we're adding 14 spaces there. As we move plan west, you have a small lot that's adding 14, and then all the way plan west, we have a small 18-space lot that we're adding. All of these locations were in collaboration with the school as well as our civil engineer. Additionally, part of Bowie is we're removing the existing platform as there's a newer platform on campus, and this one is just serving a no purpose really. So the idea here would be to repurpose the square footage and take it back and give it to the cafeteria. So after we remove these existing platform, we're picking up this additional square footage. We're added some storage towards the back, and now we have more rooms for student circulation and tables. We're also adding a new serving line, which you see to the far right. We're replacing the existing serving line equipment here. Jackson Elementary. So on the left is the current cafeteria layout. The servery line doesn't exist here, so we're creating one to allow for more seamless serving at lunch. So if you see on the plan on the right, we're adding a bump out so students will enter in and then go through the line and come out. Smith Elementary. So here's the courtyard for Smith. Here's a photo of it. Here's a existing floor plan layout of it. The challenge for this one is that it serves no function because you have large landscaping areas that largely dominate the whole courtyard. So what we're going to do is clean that up and add a central Kiva-style amphitheater for outdoor learning environment, accompanied with pavers, some synthetic turfing, and landscaping beds that will put native vegetation in so that we can keep maintenance costs low. So here's a view from the existing concourse adjacent to the building looking out towards the amphitheater. Here's another view from down on the corner, and then here's a full-on view proper. So learning can happen under the canopy or outside towards the courtyard, and we are planning for accessibility with ramps that go up to the upper levels of the amphitheater. Taylor A. So the challenge here is pickup and drop-off happens largely in a one lane at the front of the school. So there's also a challenge with once you get through the line, you can't turn both right and left. So we're going to add a lane here on the new plan. So it's a passing lane. We're going to widen that ingress, egress coming out to the street. So now parents have the option of either turning right or left. This will help speed up drop-off, pickup, and alleviate a lot of the congestion that currently exists on site. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Elementary. I had a question on, I don't even know how to say this slide is. It's the second slide for the
The one with the parking or
With the new entrance redone to Blue.
Oh, okay.
So if you could go back.
No,
Is this what you're looking
No, no.
or the canopy?
So this.
Yeah, where the canopy is.
Entrance redone, so the next one.
Okay.
So what is the paving on the right-hand side for?
That's
Like
existing.
bricks, or what is that?
It's existing. It's just existing that we're showing there.
So that's just
It's
going to be all
pavers.
filled on grass?
Yeah, it is. It's landscape.
Well, now, wait a minute now. Isn't that designed for something that they,
Currently, it was pavers purchased
by PTA and
Yes.
PTO folks, yeah.
Oh, so that's
Yeah.
like a member of the.
Yes,
oh,
yes.
okay.
Right. So we're just showing existing condition. It's not going to be removed.
I just couldn't figure out what was there for it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that was something that they put in.
Okay. And then for Smith Elementary, I was curious as to what, so the outside piece, you said it's going to be like the amphitheater, you called it?
Yeah, Kiva.
Where would the teachers stand to do the teaching? I just noticed only part of it's covered. I
So
was just
right
curious.
here, which is under the cover. The cover wraps around here, and the teachers here.
So
in the
the
middle.
gray part is all filled in as well, or just the white part on the semicircle?
It's really just showing two different elevations of materials. It's going to be really the same. One's at a higher elevation than the other.
Got it, so it's all covered?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, very nice.
The next item, we ask the board to approve Charlie Calcamy Surveying, A. Jones and Carter Company for the professional topographic surveying for various projects in the total amount of $54,900. The next item is on page 88. And we're asking that the Board of Trustees to approve environmental solutions for hazardous material surveying for various projects in the total amount of $6,120. The next item is on 110. And we're asking the Board to approve Terracon for the geotechnical study services for various projects in the total amount of $23,200.
A couple of questions about that.
Okay, go ahead.
Page 110, it lists 3 high schools and 4 middle schools, so I have a 2-part question. First question is about the 3 high schools. We're going to add a single-story multi-purpose room of 2,000 square feet to a 20-year-old high school, a 10-year-old high school, and a new high school.
Yes.
If the new high school already needs additional square footage, why aren't we building a 2-story building there, at least? With the growth of the district, even if we didn't build out the second level. Because at some point, we're going to need that space, right?
This is a bond.
Well,
This is a bond item for multi-purpose spaces. It was a line item identified in the Citizens Bond Committee and on the 2017 bond. It was a 2,000 square foot addition of multi-purpose spaces to all high schools.
Are these the orchestra rooms, or is this separate from the orchestra
well,
rooms?
no, the high schools have the large multi-purpose space.
Okay, and the middle schools?
And the middle schools have the orchestra additions.
So, Mr. McKeever, are you saying that this was approved in the 2017 bond for a single story, and that is what it is?
It was a high ceiling multi-purpose room.
High ceiling multi-purpose room.
Yes,
Yeah.
similar to a gym type of ceiling.
I think, I've got the question. I think they were trying to do wrestling in there. They were doing other sports that was needing to be.
Other items like color guard, wrestling,
dance, any kind of multi-purpose use.
Instead of the hallway, the gym, the cafeteria, because we now have more programs than we've ever had.
I didn't get that from the printed materials.
Yes, sir.
That makes sense now, why it would be single story.
It's not going to be like a classroom of, it is, but it's not. It's not like desks and chairs. It's going to be that they could if they needed to use it.
Yeah. My second question on that is about the 4 middle schools. Do all 4 of these middle school, well, let me ask this, let me back up. There is a distinction, I'm thinking, between the band and the orchestra?
Yes.
Yes.
Do the 4 middle schools currently all have band halls?
Yes.
Does the 5th one, Roberts, have a band and an orchestra hall? Because it's not listed here.
We added the orchestra room during construction.
Construction, yes.
So for the 70% of the public, I learned that stat from Region 4, does not have a direct connection with the public school system in the state of Texas. And they're the taxpayers. Help me understand why 6th grade campuses need a separate orchestra room from a band hall. These are 11 and 12-year-olds. They are learning or honing their musical skills. Trying to understand the rationale of adding a separate hall just for orchestra at that level.
Those are going to be implemented gradually, and when the item came up in the bond in 2017, it was decided to build those at middle schools to take advantage of lower building costs, and then in future bond issues we might approach and look for an opportunity to build those on the junior highs and then the high schools.
I think the question is, why not just have it in the band hall?
Is it separate?
The band hall is a fully developed program, and there's a full day of instruction that's already happening there. There really isn't the space to do that currently.
There's 2 different programs.
6th graders there's 2 different programs.
Right. There's orchestra and there's band.
There's orchestra, band, choir, theater, and art.
And do the junior highs have the 2 separate halls currently?
No.
So
they will.
They will, but so what's happening? What's going to happen when the middle schools have the 2 halls and they get to the next level, 7th grade, and they don't have the 2 halls? What happens to that year of training?
We're sharing space and implementing wherever we can.
That's why we need another bond. That's the bond. And multi-purpose rooms. When was this program, the orchestra program, implemented? Because it's been a few years.
We're in year 3 right now, I think. Yes.
And do you know how many students are in that program, or can you get that information?
I can get that information. I don't have that with me.
I know,
right now.
but that's something that might be helpful.
I can tell you it's grown to the point where we have a teacher on each track to teach it and grow it and develop it. So it's growing.
And last year is when you brought some orchestra students to perform for us.
That's correct.
Okay.
But this is the first year we've had one orchestra director on each of the 5 tracks. They're coming.
You're saying the interest is increasing?
Yes, we expect that the interest will increase and enrollment will climb.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
She was still going.
No, go ahead.
So you're saying the band hall is full, it's utilized all day long, so there's no room for orchestra to use it, correct? That's what you just said?
We can utilize one of the 2 band spaces at various times of the day, depending on scheduling, at the junior highs. Most of our junior highs have a second instructional space. It's a smaller sized band hall.
Sorry, but this is for the middle school we're talking about.
But this, the orchestra room will be in the middle school. It will be very similar to what's at Roberts Middle School.
I haven't been in that one.
They have a dedicated orchestra room.
Okay, so at the middle schools currently, there's a band hall only.
There is.
And you said that's used all day long.
Correct.
Okay, so there's no time for the orchestra to go in?
There are times during the day, there may be 1 or 2 periods
Okay.
where we're working it out. We're trying to maximize what we have right now. Like all junior high and middle school orchestra is mostly happening on most campuses in one place. On the gold track, it's happening at Briscoe, and the kids are transported over. On the purple track, high school and middle school is at Roberts. At Lehman, we have a small classroom that we're using. On the blue track, we have classes at Wessendorf, and we have classes at Lamar Junior High.
So you transport between?
The teacher travels.
Oh, the teacher travels. Okay. So could you do like a multi-purpose room versus just a room for orchestra? If the need is not as great right now?
Well, at some point, we expect that the orchestra will be fully developed and will have a full day of instruction on all 3 secondary campuses.
What does that at some point mean? What's your estimation?
I would expect that they all have different growth rates. So our fastest growth is happening on the maroon track, on the purple track, on the gold track. Blue and red are slower to develop.
It's at a year, 2 years, 3 years?
I would expect that in the next 3 to 4 years, we'll be looking at a full program on all secondary campuses.
So until that kind of gets there for some of the schools, can this room be used for other purposes?
This multi-purpose room?
The orchestra room is what she's asking. What's going to happen to the orchestra room if it's only being used once or twice a day?
Right.
If it's...
Can it be multi-purpose until it is...
At the multi-purpose orchestra room at the middle school, we can transport our students to the middle schools for all-day instruction. Then the teacher wouldn't have to travel.
I think that any space in any school can be used if they need it. And so if they had the need to move a math class down there, they could do that. So they have control over that, all of those spaces. But as the program grows, they are the primary ones that will be using the orchestra space.
I guess I've never been in an orchestra room before, and so I don't know if it's, set how it's laid out, and that's why I guess what I'm really asking is, can it be used for other purposes while it's not being used for orchestra? So it's more multi-purpose than versus we're not there, it's 3 to 4 years out, but we're building for it now. You know what I mean? I don't know if it there's certain flooring or there's how it's set up.
I probably could answer that as a former administrator. And again, what Dr. Randall said is there's space in a building and you need the space. You're going to use the space. Ideally, the space is going to be for a growing orchestra program because it is set up similar to a band program. However, if you have a study hall class that is not, science or anything that you can put chairs in there, and you can easily switch out, most administrators are going to do that. So the answer to the question is yes, absolutely. The space we're not going to let it sit empty on purpose. If the space is needed, it will be utilized.
Is the new Randall High School and Wright Junior High being built with a band hall and an orchestra room?
Yes.
And a single-story multi-purpose room. That's 2,000 square feet.
Yes.
We learned from our mistakes.
Well, it's just really unfortunate that Fulcher High School is so new, and we're having to go back and add space to it already.
Well, what happened there?
Well,
That was my question,
I think
too.
as we started, did we add some and then we have to, if we're doing it for one?
Multi-purpose facility spaces. Well, yes, it was added in the 2017 bond for all high schools, and Fulcher was already built when we decided that in the Citizens Bond Committee and the bond decision.
It was already done.
Because I know we've had discussions, we're learning from the past. How long do you anticipate it's going to take to add these on? Are we talking another year?
Yes, we are. We're talking another year. We'll start construction in the summer of 2020, and it'll take another year to complete it.
So essentially, by that time, you're going to have the kids that you're going to need this for. You will.
The next next item, we ask the board to approve supplements to the agreement with Terracon for material testing for Randall and Wright with off-site packages of 1, 2, and 3 in the amount of $97,078. The next item, we ask the board to approve Apple to provide hardware, software, and services in the amount of $1,540,000 for the district-wide iPad refresh project.
Yes, go ahead.
So on that one, is this going to come out of the CRO comp refresh?
Yes, it's coming out of the 2017 bond that is computer refresh, and iPads are part of that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how to put this into a question, but when I was looking at this, all of the years that I've been here, I'm never understanding what the schedule is or how much. This always seems to, it always seems like it's coming up.
Well, because
and
it's on a
do you have a chart or something that you go by?
For some things, yes. Now, specifically for the iPad refresh, 5 to 6 years is the average, but with iPad refresh, it depends on when Apple decides that an older operating system is no longer going to be supported and updated, and then they won't run the newest apps, or they're not as secure or anything like that. So the ones that we're replacing this time are either 5 or 6 years old. Computers, there's a lot of depends on this. We buy 5-year warranties on all of our computers. If they're still going strong and not a lot of failure after the warranty is up, we might extend those into a 6-year. If, like I said, if parts are available for us to fix them, we'll extend laptops and desktop computers until they're no longer viable to support.
Okay.
The next item, we ask the board to approve the purchase of security camera data storage, secure backup storage, and installation and configuration services in the amount of $402,642.62.
And that's all our action items.
Those are all of the action items.
Do we have any audience patrons to us?
There it is.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any presentations in information, Dr.?
We actually do, and we're going to, with the board's permission, jump down to number 11, the Comprehensive Facility Study and Long Range Facility Plan.
Hi, tonight I'd like to introduce PBK Architects, Mr. Rick Bland and Mr. Lauren Pargood, to do the presentation for the Long Range Facilities Assessment and, Facilities Assessment and Long Range Facilities Plan update. I wanted to let y'all know that we are on schedule, and this is lining up perfect with our February update from our demographer, PASA, and as we move forward, we'll be ready to go after that presentation from Dr. Gessman. So I'll like to turn it over now to Rick Bland.
Thank you, Kevin. Good evening, Madam President, trustees, Dr. Randall. First of all, I'd like to thank you for inviting us here tonight to allow us some time to present our update to the long-range master plan. Also, I'd like to commend you as a board and Dr. Randall for commissioning such a detailed long-range plan that is a true living and breathing document that can be used for many, many years for everyone within the district. Also like to thank the staff, Kevin and the entire staff and every one of the principals that have allowed us their time as we visited campuses and walked their campuses and interrupted their valuable time and their days, and we appreciate everyone's time that helped us get to where we are today. This is an update of the long-range master plan. So, and in our time frame of our schedule, we've got about two months left, so we're in pretty good shape on the schedule. Pretty good shape on our status where we want to be at this point in a long-range plan. Tonight the format of tonight's presentation is to take you through chapter by chapter of a long-range plan. So we're basically going to turn the page and show you every chapter of the book. And then we will do a little bit of a deep dive into the assessment, which is the facility condition assessments for every one of the campuses. We're going to do a deep dive into 2 campuses tonight. When you receive your final document, which is a 3-inch 3-ring binder or electronic format as well, we have many ways of pushing the product out to everyone. You will see the example of the 2 facilities that we studied tonight, one of these for every one of the campuses. So we've walked every campus, and Lauren's going to talk about that in a second. But let's talk just a second about the long-range plan. What is a long-range plan, and what does a long-range plan contain? We have an introduction. This is kind of the agenda for the book. This is the table of contents, I guess. We have an introduction, past and present and future. This is a chapter that just kind of, if you're new to the district, you pick up the book, you get a little bit of history of the district in the past and also present, and then where's the future, what's the future for the school district, as well as findings and directions. Findings and directions, while it's at the front of the book, it's more of an executive summary. This is one of the chapters that we populate after, towards the very end of all of our work, where we actually document as an executive summary some of the findings, and then what would the projected direction be to address that finding. And then there's a demographics and capacity chapter. That's exactly what you would think it is. It's Pat Guzman's PASA study. And then also their updates. We have a new schools and major projects chapter. New schools is driven from the demographics, and we document the order of new schools, where they might be built in other detail. And then the facility condition assessment. So if the binder's a 3-inch 3-ring binder, about 2.5 inches of that is probably the assessment itself. So that is thousands of line items, and Lauren's going to go into a little bit more detail on that in just a second. And then also district-owned property. That's interesting tonight. There's been several of the topics that we're going to talk about tonight that have already been mentioned. We have a district-owned property chapter, which is the land bank. We call it the land bank. As we're looking for new schools, or we see that there's a new school required in an area, it's good to know as a planner to know, okay, where do we own land? Where do we need to purchase land in the future? So we have a land bank that identifies all the existing land within the district. So let's get in a little bit into the details about how an assessment is put together.
So just before we get to the deep dive that Rick was just mentioning, so what is the process of a facility assessment? So the facility condition assessment team consists of what you see in that diagram to your right. It consists of architects walking the campuses, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, plumbing. We had our sports athletic group go out and walk all the sports fields, all the field houses. The tools used by the facility assessment team, a couple of the most important items were, one, you see the maintenance records and the life cycle schedules. We met with Aaron Morgan, James Carrillo, Paul Gutowski, and the M&O group, and we sat down with them, and they helped us to identify chillers or roofs or other things of that nature that have life cycle items that are 1 to 2 years that need to be replaced, or maybe they have another 10 to 20 years. The existing floor plans and site plans. We took those floor plans of each school and each facility, including this boardroom and this administration building that we're sitting in tonight, and we walked every last square inch of it. We went to every room. We identified with the principals after we sat down and went through their questionnaires, looked at all the items, made sure we had them documented, made sure we put our eyes on them. Aerial studies, principal interviews, and the questionnaires was one of the other ones. And I just kind of mentioned, we received 1 per campus, and sometimes we got 5 per campus. I think on this building alone, I got 5 different questionnaires from 5 different people that address different items that need to be addressed. And again, I walked with Kevin McKeever. We went every square inch of this building, and we identified all of those items. As Rick mentioned just a few minutes ago, the 2019 PASA demographic study, just identifying where your district is experiencing growth at the present moment. And I know you have another one coming up in February 2020. That might change from what was addressed or shown in the 2019. Again, we walked all 54 campuses and support buildings. That included ag buildings, food and transportation. I completed over 5.2 million square feet of site investigation, and we completed like 500 hours between all the consultants, not just me alone, but between all the consultants, there were about 500 hours spent walking each and every campus, as well as inputting the data. We had a kickoff meeting right here in the boardroom with general staff and the principals, just to give them a brief overview of what they'd be getting, which was what you see on the right, which was that principal questionnaire. That was sent to all the campus administrators and to all the district facility and M&O facility team from LCISD. They went through, they filled out the items, and some of them, when we went to meet with those principals, they had other items on a different sheet of paper that they gave us, and we identified all those items. There were additional items that Kevin and Aaron have sent me that have come from principals that say, oh, I forgot this. So we had those documented in email, and we also were able to put those into the assessment. The master planning departmental meetings, we've had those. We're continually going to have those through February to get to that final list of items and scrub through every item to make sure we have everything prioritized, which we'll go through in a few. And the group that you see here, the special ed, the fine arts, the CTE, we're going to continually meet with those, scrub the items, and kind of go through those findings and directions that Rick kind of mentioned earlier.
Okay, let's turn chapter by chapter of the book and look at what the final product will look like. So we have an introduction, past, and present, and future that I mentioned. Remember, this is a living and breathing document that is a 10-year document. As you update it, and it could be updated in a few years, and it turns to the 13 and keeps pushing out. As new people arrive to the district, new board members or new staff, you can pick up this document and you can get a quick snapshot of the district and a little bit of the history of the district and just a few fun facts also. The next chapter is the findings and directions. The findings and directions, I mentioned this executive summary. This is one of the chapters that we populate after all of our studies, after all of our input into the database, and after all of our reviews with the departmental meetings, and look for big target items that might be a major finding and then become a direction for possibly a bond planning committee. Some of those findings and directions from the previous planning period, some of these you may not have heard of, the orchestra rooms and the multi-purpose rooms. I say that as a joke, I'm sorry, but we're sitting back there knowing that there's a lot of discussion tonight about both of those. Those were findings and became a direction in the previous planning period. One of the findings might have been the orchestra program is experiencing growth and the campuses cannot accommodate the existing programs, and the direction would have been to build orchestra rooms at the identified campuses. Same thing with the practice pools. Practice pools was a big discussion at the time, and then it became a direction to add practice pools to the campuses. These are previous findings and directions, and as I said, as we get to the end of our planning of this document, and as we produce the final chapter of the document, it will be these findings and directions. The demographics and capacity studies is the PASA report from 2019. We have started to populate the book with the 2019 report. We know that we also will have, as with every master plan we do, it spans a long enough period where we do experience an update to a demographics report. So we're queued up and ready to revise all the data from the revised report in the spring from the good people at PASA. What this does is we put a few of we don't put their entire document in the long range plan. We put a few of their important sheets in there that are really about the growth and about planning for new schools. So this one's about capacities and the potential growth at each one of these campuses that are listed. As you know, they also have a few maps within their document that show potential areas for future schools in 2020, 21, 22, and they go a little bit further. The new schools and major projects chapter. So as we march through the book, this book is building upon the previous chapter. So we have a demographics report. We have the good people at PASA telling us when we may need a school, when we may need it in a certain area, or what date the school may need to open. We take that information and we build a chart similar to this one. This one is still in draft form. It's using the 2019 data from the report. So as you can see on the far left side, we have elementaries identified 29, 30, 31. Tamaron currently in construction, and then we also go general information about site. Is the site owned or not? I mentioned the land bank earlier. This is where we utilize that data. So you can see that if number 30 still remains at this time frame for 22, it could be at the veranda site. It's already an owned piece of property. Now those numbers may change, and 30 may not be at that site, or may not become that same year. That's all dependent on updates from the PASA report. So as we move into the next chapters, or into the new schools chapters, where now we know that we need new schools. We know we need them at a certain time. We know that we have land or don't have land. One of the biggest things that is always discussed, and it's been discussed in this boardroom quite a few times, but also as you move into a bond planning committee or a citizens advisory committee, they ask about cost. They ask about inflation. They ask, how do you get to your cost? Well, we have a cost database. This cost database, the upper section of this chart is all high schools. We have middle schools, junior highs, elementaries populated here as well. They go back a few years. But we use this data to identify current cost as best as possible. As new cost comes in, even if we're in the middle of in a recent bond planning exercise south of here, we had a school that was built and costs came in during the bond planning phase, and we immediately updated the database. We were able to update some of the cost also. So we're trying to be very interactive and very current with as much cost as possible. This database is populated with several architects' projects as well, not just ours. And there's a recent project that bid today in a neighboring district. We will populate the chart with that as well, and also use that for planning as we move through the cost of the new schools. Additional to that, that's greenfield projects. When you're doing an assessment, we mentioned that the document is actually about 2.5 inches of assessment line items. These are individual line items, from replacing carpet or replacing a few doors in a campus. Well, that's entirely different unit cost of replacing a few doors within a campus versus 500 doors of a high school, and you can amortize that over the entire cost of a project. That brings the cost of a door down. This is a unit cost database versus greenfield cost database. So as we have done so many assessments, we realize that the unit cost database is probably one of the more important planning tools within this document, so we can correctly identify the cost of all these unit costs, which are higher because they're smaller items. You did see today also a presentation on replacing carpet. Lauren's going to talk in a second about grouping carpet projects together and how do you get there from an assessment. Well, we know that because of this unit cost database, that as you do group them together, the unit cost comes down. So the project that Corrigan presented tonight, that unit cost for one school would have been higher if you didn't roll it into several other schools. We're going to show how you get there with this planning tool as well. The cost data, the new schools, and also the major projects as those are identified, the natatoriums, the practice pools, the district-wide natatorium and the practice pools were major projects that were identified in the past. Each one of those has a cost sheet similar to the one you see on the screen, where soft cost is identified, and then also projected inflation. So the facility condition assessment. This is where really the bulk of the book and the bulk of the work and the hours that have been experienced so far. Lauren, tell us a little bit about this one.
So Rick kind of just mentioned a few things about how we can go through and kind of organize the spreadsheet. So if we want to do like a carpet replacement throughout 10 schools, or if we want to do LED lights and replace fluorescent lights in 20 schools. This kind of gives us a good guideline of how we can go through and kind of break those items out and categorize them. So if you look on the screen, and this is what you'll see in your binder when you get them as well, as far as all the facility assessment items. You see like C for civil. That means our civil engineer went out, they assessed the individual items, and they notated them. So if you see C in your binder once you get it, that means the civil engineer addressed it. We'll go down to classification code, PLF, plumbing fixtures. If a sink or a toilet needs to be replaced, or we're gutting and redoing restrooms on the campus, it will be categorized underneath the PLF.
So this is where, if we scroll down and then zoom in, we would see C for carpet or flooring.
Correct.
This is where we query that together and be able to put together a package that Corrigan presented tonight.
Correct. So the biggest item that we would always look at when we go through the assessment is the priority code. So pretty much we look at a priority 1, 2, 3, or a 4. A priority 1 is a must-do, which means it has 1 to 2 years of life cycle left in it. A priority 2, it's 3 to 5 years of life cycle. 3 and 4, you're looking anywhere from 6 to 10 years plus. So there are two things that kind of make up each one of those priorities. So we'll look at priority 2 just for example. I'll go back to the orchestra rooms. I'll grew up, I played trumpet from 5th grade on. I have 2 kids that are in band currently right now. So it kind of addresses if that program need changes throughout the years, like they were saying, they're seeing a growth on it. So one thing I didn't know with my kids playing in the band right now, when I was there, we all were in the band room at the same time, no matter what instrument you played. My children now, what I just learned from going to their Christmas program last week, is that they all break them out. They're compartmentalized. So the flutes are in one class, then the next class is clarinet, then the next class is, brass wind or some other instrument. So that need has increased. Like Ram was saying, you have students in those band rooms pretty much all day. So that need for that orchestra room, that could be one of those priority 2 needs that might come up. Again, and then the life expectancy is the other thing. So again, we mentioned earlier that we met with M&O, looked at the items with them. I think last year y'all did a chiller replacement on certain campuses. That means those chillers reached their 20 to 25 year life expectancy and they had to be replaced.
So every item that you see, these thousands of items that you're going to see line by line, they're going to have 2 reasons for a priority code. One is life cycle. It's going to fail in 5 years. Aaron and his guys know that. And it needs to be, hopefully it makes it to 7 and 8 years, but it needs to be identified. And the other one is curriculum or instruction.
Correct. So we'll just take a deep dive into one of the elementary schools that we decided to break out. Austin Elementary. So once you get your binders, every school will start just like this. You'll have the school with the front door picture, identifying that campus, and some campus data at the bottom of the sheet. Then you'll just have an aerial, which just gives you a brief overview of the campus. Again, I mentioned earlier, we took a floor plan of each and every campus, and we sat with those principals. There were some campuses, just take Austin Elementary, when that school was built, it might have had a classroom that was designed and built into the school. But over the years, that classroom might be now used for special needs, or that classroom may have been divided into conference room / storage. So we took those floor plans, met with them, and just identified things like that.
This allows us to look at a design capacity versus a current operational capacity of a facility. I mean, the design capacity may have changed because of the things that Lauren just mentioned, which changes the capacity of the building.
So this is the categorization that we just looked at, and this is how we classify each of the items. So Rick just blew up the screen so you can get a closer look at it. So again, the classification, which was an A2, which means an architect went out and identified what that item was. Repair wall surface cracks throughout the facility. It was a priority 1, which means it was either life safety or it had a life expectancy of 1 to 2 years before we felt it needed to be addressed. We addressed it as a structural foundation item, and this was one of the items that was on the principal questionnaire. And if you also look, it says consultant verified, which means we sat with the principal, went through her list. A lot of times those principals were very excited to walk with us, so we had a lot of participation from the campus administrators, and we went out and we put our eyes on it. So that's what the consultant verified stands for. Rick just kind of went through the cost data. So what you see on the screen now is based on the data that we have with the current market, that's what that number would be. Just another one, Austin Elementary, again you see A10. Any one of the A's means architecture. This one we highlighted mechanical. Replace air-cooled chiller. It has a priority 2, which means the life expectancy is about 3 to 5 years before it would need to be replaced. Again, we sat with M&O, and they helped us address a lot of these HVAC requests. It was a building addition. I'm sorry, Rick moved screens on me. I'm reading a different screen now. So food service, which is FS1. Basically, we looked at the kitchen. We had a food service consultant go out, and they suggested just basically gut and redo the entire kitchen. So that's what that line item says. It's a priority 2, again, 3 to 5 year expectancy on all the food service equipment. Building addition, consultant verified. That means that food service consultant went out there and put their eyes on it and gave an estimated cost of what the market is today. Just really quickly, because this is pretty much a lot of the same you just saw for Austin Elementary, for George Ranch High School. Front page, that campus data plus the area. Floor plan of George Ranch. Of course, you'll see a first and second floor plan once you get the packet. And then just some of the same things again. And I'll mention on this because Mr. Hunt did ask us this in the facilities meeting. So there are some items on here like we said, we're pretty much going to address the P1s through P4s. There are some items that are maintenance requests. And now, since AJ kind of did a presentation earlier, we had a lot of requests for additional parking. Carter Elementary, which is pretty much a brand new campus, was one of those campuses that said we need additional parking. The item was noted as currently meets, the required parking spaces of your current elementary schools, but Bowie Elementary didn't, so they requested additional parking, and that was something that we noted as in progress. So the item does not drop off the list. If we note it as a maintenance item, meaning M&O will handle it, or if we say in progress, meaning that it's currently being funded or done through another bond fund, that item stays on the list, but it is categorized not as a P1 through P4, but just noting that it was a maintenance item or something that's still in progress.
Wait, can I ask a quick question? Where would the P, it would be a P instead of a number?
So we have some more. Rick, can you go to the screen after this one, I think?
Yeah, the ones he's talking about, actually, they're in our database in the background. We list the 1s through 4s. I'm going to go to one of those sheets, this sheet.
Yeah, so if you, I was looking for the one that had maintenance.
That's in the very, very beginning.
Yep. So under the priority codes, if we go back a couple of slides, Ms. Williams, there was maintenance, there was some that said NA or in progress.
So that would be listed and where the number is?
Yes, ma'am.
And that means it's in progress?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just like on Austin Elementary, AJ just presented that they're going to do the security vestibule. Yeah. That was a principal questionnaire item that we did address, so we just noted as in progress.
Okay, thank you.
And the reason it doesn't make it here, because these items are the 1 through 4s that have cost assigned. If it's in progress, it does not need cost assigned for future funding.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
And district-owned property, Rick kind of mentioned earlier today about district-owned property, and these just outline and give you a highlight. And this is the very last chapter you'll see in your binder, but it just gives you an overview of what properties the district currently owns for various school sites and various support building sites. That's it. Have any questions?
Awesome. It sounds like we have a good checkoff list.
Yes, ma'am.
Literally, the way you're preparing this, I'm excited to see this.
Like I said, the principals spend a lot of time putting the stuff together, as well as the M&O department, as well as the facilities group, and they're doing a good job of communicating to us the needs. Like I said, some of the items, the principals said, man, I forgot this, can we please add it? So, we're just methodically going through and making sure we get our bases covered and just trying to get all the information captured.
Am I understanding that this report, though, as things are getting done, it'll just be going to the bottom of the list? The checkoff?
Yes,
it's not going to just disappear?
No, it's not going to disappear.
Because this is a living document that if you're not here in 5 years, they see that some things were taken care of, or they can go back and say, in 2020, we put in new carpet.
Correct.
So if someone comes up and says, when was the last time this, it will all be in this stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think you mentioned at the meeting, not only are we going to get a binder, but it's something that will be on our website too.
We'll provide it digitally as well.
Okay. Go ahead.
So everything that each campus asked for or pointed out that is a need will be in this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then what about needs versus wants?
So that's where the priority codes come into play, and that's where the life cycle of the program needs come in. And that's something we still have to go through with district personnel and just kind of go through and make sure we're hitting all the. Prime example, George Ranch, they made mention that they wanted a third football field. Well, that might be a P4 that might come as a program need, 20 years from now. But
see on the screen, I've backed up to the P4. Future
right.
Consideration not to be addressed with funding at this time.
Correct.
That's because we don't want to lose the item.
Wait, where?
The very last item, number 4.
Oh, on that. Oh, gotcha.
Rebuild the practice.
So we capture the item. We don't want to lose it. However, may not be considered at this time.
Do you take into consideration equity for like number of students, that type of thing?
Priority 2 does that also. Priority 2, that's in the description.
So number 2 should do?
Yeah, 2 should do. This item is really about parity. It's about needs, about program needs,
So
as well as the life cycle side of the priority.
So since you brought it up, So for George Ranches, it's the only 6A high school. Do they have equitable football fields for the number of athletes? Is that taken into consideration as a need versus a want?
They do at this time. Now, it's a administrative decision of whether or not we want to add an additional field, or it becomes a bond planning committee decision as well. Now, that item will still be in the plan. Well, if this makes it to a bond planning committee, the priority 1s, 2s, and 3s are all there. If someone wants to move a priority 3, or there's a discussion with the committee, that could happen.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I understand what this is. What are you going to ask us to do with this when you present us the 3-inch binder? Exactly.
This is a planning tool for many areas within the district. The real use of this is for a future bond planning committee. So what we can do with this, as we identify all these unit costs and also the new school costs that for a 3-year period or a 4-year period, whatever that discussion becomes, we can quickly come up with an amount to pull out of this long-range plan of how much that would be. So it's a planning tool for many uses within the district, many areas.
And you're going to present that to us in February?
Yes.
Well,
no,
March, because we have to get the demographer's report first.
We finish in February after the updated report. Yes, ma'am.
So this is not something we're going to receive at 7 p.m. on a Friday night and have to vote on it Tuesday night?
No. Kevin already grabbed us by the reins on that one.
Good.
But we can also use it as a board. If the bond committee comes back and puts things on there and we go back, we can look to see, did they pull a 4 or a 3 and put it in there? Sure. Or did they skip a 1 and a 2 and not put it in there? So we as a board have that information too, along with the bond committee, so when we finally make a decision, we can use it too.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So like I said, it's a living, working document.
It truly is. We joke that as soon as we press print, it's obsolete.
Right.
Yeah. It's just like driving your car off a parcel. A new car. Are there any other questions? So bring your big wagons. Okay. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much.
All right, we'll go back to the beginning of our information items, Dr. Randall.
I'll just kind of walk down through here, and you stop me if you have questions on any of these.
Okay.
Beginning first of all with summer school. Avail Solutions Crisis Hotline.
I have a question.
Okay.
When I looked at the numbers of calls, I don't know if the right word would be that I'm impressed because it looks good not to have very many calls, but is this a normal expectancy?
Well, again, we don't know expected phone calls. We've just had it in place for, from last year and this year.
Okay.
But it is a safety net for our students to have 24/7 access to licensed help if a crisis or a need comes up for them to contact.
How do y'all get that out to the kids?
So the phone numbers are posted in counselor's office. It's also connected to the Student Services app. And so we worked, Dr. Roberts working with the counselors to help students download the app onto smartphone or device. And then the phone number is connected right to the app that they can call.
On the, it said it was a grant from the George Foundation.
Yes.
Do we have any idea how long we can have access to this grant?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but the George Foundation did just release their priorities for the next 5 years, and mental health was their number one priority. And so they've been very gracious in the past, and we're hopeful that that's the same in the future.
Go ahead.
Just Alex was saying earlier at the FCEC committee meeting we had earlier, we were talking about how we would like to make that one of the services that we promote at the 5 different events that we go to.
Just show them where the app is and how to download it.
Yeah, like have somebody at a table and people can talk about it. And so especially, I guess, for the parents as well, right? So that's definitely one we want to have at each event, just to throw that out there. And Alex was saying y'all saw it on the wall at the school, right?
Yeah, we were at Lamar Junior High yesterday, Mr. Hunt and I, and we saw an 8x 8.5 by 12 piece of paper that had it on there. Is that scattered throughout the district?
Yes, sir, it is, as well as it's available obviously on iOS and Android devices. And so for our elementary schools, we send letters home to the parents and then communicate obviously with secondary. But yes, sir, we try and get it out as much as possible. So the numbers are not just in the counselor's office; they are in restrooms and all over the schools, and because we want it accessible.
Is this like in the junior highs, middle schools, or all the elementaries too?
Yes.
Everybody. Okay. Thank you.
Band instrument maintenance cost. Pre-K update. School board recognition.
Wait. Go ahead, Mr. Minsky.
I know this is still in progress. We're going to get another fuller report again.
In January.
In January.
Yes.
Where it was mentioning that when y'all had major site visits, as it was going down, it says that no one had teachers that were certified.
To teach pre-K.
The teacher certification.
To teach pre-K.
On your committee, do you have any community members that are there with you to discuss that requirement?
No, currently we're working through our staffing committee, and this is an RFP process as we would do in other kind of areas through the business office. So traditionally we've not had somebody from committee there. This is just according to our current staff members that are part of the
in-house
committee. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The HB 3 does not say that it's mandatory for 4-year-olds to go to pre-K. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's the ones that qualify.
Correct.
Okay. There was the one about that in January of this coming year, you are planning on opening a program at Thomas Elementary?
Yes, currently right now they have the staffing and the numbers so that we feel confident that we can at least open that one location, as well as documented that we are also opening up Seguin's additional spots as we did originally in September as well to additional students, particularly that were residing in our Title campuses, Title Elementary campuses.
Okay. At Thomas, did they have a half-day program?
Yes.
So this will be the full day. It'll just the same kids.
Yes.
Going into the full day program.
Yes.
And that'll be the only school you're going to start at.
Currently, right now, it's where our staffing is working. Yes.
Okay.
To be able to do that.
Okay.
With the exception of Seguin and opening the 30 monolingual and 14 bilingual spots. And we'll begin that in the third 9 weeks in January.
Okay.
I have a question. At Thomas, they have enough students, or are you bringing students from other schools?
No, we're just going to serve the kids that are currently at Thomas.
Okay.
So you're not, that was a half-day program.
Correct.
Okay, so that won't eliminate any of the kids?
We do not believe so
Should
at this time. No.
Okay, good.
Based upon the conversations we've had.
Okay, good.
Okay, School Board Recognition Month. Board Policies 114, first reading.
You have some questions on this?
Tax collection report.
You have a question?
Oh,
okay,
I'm sorry.
Ahead. What page?
Guys, I'm doing this just so that tomorrow I'm not going to just
Okay.
Page 215.
Okay. Tell us
The HB 771 at the very bottom clarifies the use of wireless communication devices on buses.
CNC?
CNC legal.
Okay.
Can you clarify that?
I think that what they are just referencing is that there are some buses that, especially out in rural areas, that use a lot of wireless equipment on the buses. Now, I've not read through the details of it.
But we already have all that in place.
No, we don't have a wireless that I'm aware of. We might.
Would that be on the new buses?
We do have two-way radios on all of the buses that we use for wireless communication, but I think the target of that has always been cell phones, and we have a policy in place now that addresses that and prohibits the use of cell phones and other wireless communication devices on the buses when the bus is in motion.
Okay.
Now what page?
217. Technology Resources Cybersecurity, CQB Local. It says provisions on required employee and board member cybersecurity training and reporting. Okay, how does that apply to us?
I think it's from the Senate bill.
Yeah.
House Bill 3834 says that every employee and elected official of the district must take cybersecurity training that meets the state-approved curriculum, as decided upon by the Texas Department of Information Resources.
So that's what you're going to teach us?
Not me.
I knew he was going to say that.
Well, we will have to adopt a state-approved curriculum.
But they have not created that yet?
So any organization that creates training, for example, we use something called Safe Schools training. And we believe, we've been talking to them, they're going to develop their own that meets the state requirement. And then since we already own Safe Schools, we'll probably just use their training to implement it. Okay. But there's all sorts of free and for pay solutions out there that meet the state requirement.
And will this go into our policy as far as board training, a requirement? Do we have to put that in there, or is it
will be in there, because it will. Or not.
It's a requirement.
Yeah.
Because what I'm understanding, as a board, we're going to do cyber, and then we do the trafficking. They're asking us for more training.
If we're going to be compliant with the law, yes, ma'am.
But then we will be talking with the lawyers and helping us revise it, or is it automatic?
Most of that will be adjusted as far as part of your updates.
Okay.
But again, they're still trying to figure out the implementation on some of these laws that were passed.
Mm-hmm. Don't put the cart before the horse.
Okay. Just board members, more training.
As they make information available to us, we are complying as we're getting updates in terms of these, because they're still giving us
trying to figure it out.
And the deadline on that, for that one in particular, is June 14th of 2020 for staff and board members. So we've got time to adopt and implement.
Okay.
Okay.
And what other page?
Page 224. It says HB 678 allows a student to satisfy one of the two required credits in languages other than English by successfully completing an elementary school course in American Sign Language. And I'm going, why is it elementary? Am I missing?
What letters?
Under EIF legal.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
HB 678.
That's just a change in the legislative requirements. We don't currently offer American Sign Language at our elementary campuses, so it'll be in policy to comply with the legislative change, but we're not currently offering any of those.
Okay.
American Sign Language.
But do we have it in the upper levels?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. At all of our high school campuses.
So this is something new to...
Yes.
All high schools have that.
All of our high school campuses offer American Sign Language. Yes, ma'am.
But if someone in the elementary schools do take this, is it my understanding then it will count already toward their high school credit?
It could be. And so it could be, for example, we might have a student transfer in that in another district they were offered that course or participated in a language program at the elementary level, and then we could award them credit for that in their high school transcript.
Oh, okay. Page 226. Under the Wellness and Health Services, FFAC Legal. Actually, I'm going to go to the very first one, at the very top, FFAA, second line. Students who are participating in marching band are to receive pre-participation physicals. We don't do that?
Yes, we do.
We are complying
Yes, ma'am.
with
Yes, we are compliant.
in the UIL? Okay. Then the other one under wellness, that happened to be the music. A prohibition on district regulating the sale, distribution, or possession of certain cold medicine. I'm not understanding that. A prohibition on a district regulating the sale.
And I'm not sure that we can answer that. Because again, this is a legal, which is encompassing the entire state.
So
Okay,
there could
so
be
that's
small
not-
districts that
I don't know
might
that-
do that.
Yeah.
Do they sell it? Okay. All right, guys. I did my homework.
But that's the problem, we have as big a state as we do things in these little.
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Okay, on page 228,
Okay.
under two things, and I think I know, FFE, legal, student welfare, student assistance programs / counseling. Legally referenced policy on student assisted programs has been updated to include existing legal provisions on consent for services provided by a licensed specialist in school psychology. Do we have one on
LSSPs.
Pardon?
LSSPs.
Okay, that's the group we're talking. Okay. I'm going to jump back down to the very last one, a school nurse may be a member of the district's concussion oversight team and is authorized to remove an affected student from practices or competition.
And the
What is
word
that?
may is operative because in a small school district, they may use a counselor for that,
So that-
a nurse for that purpose.
Do we have people at all sporting events?
Oh, there's,
There we go.
there's-
Okay, here she is. You thought you could get out of this.
We do not currently have anyone in that role serving on our concussion oversight team. We met this fall. Our concussion oversight team at our campuses is made of our licensed athletic trainers currently at sporting events, supported by our team physicians as needed, and of course, our parents.
Okay.
Do the refs are usually trained in that too, aren't they? If they notice a child is
Yes,
having-
they can send them for evaluation to the sideline to one of our licensed athletic trainers, and we have those at our junior high contest and our high school contest.
Are we in need of any more counselors or psychologists? Are we short if we filled all those positions?
That's
Is that a different lady? Sorry,
Oh, that's a
girls. Or different, that wouldn't go underneath that,
Dr. Roberts is here.
under the student welfare, the one I was asking about, the licensed specialist.
So the LSSPs, licensed specialists in school psychology, are utilized only for students in special education unless we have an incident that requires additional support. And when counselors are going out to maybe do some grief counseling and things like that, we will send the LSSPs out for something like that. But outside of that, they do require consent from a parent because it is a part of the special education program.
I'm special, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, and it's just our school policies. I'm through with everything else.
Okay, you good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Can we move on, or do you have more questions?
This is a different one, isn't it?
No, it's the same thing.
We're still going through this, through our locals?
But those are just, that's This, go ahead, Dr. Randy.
All of what you're looking at is first reading for policy update 114.
Okay, so
we typically give you that a month ahead of, and then next month is when you would approve it. This is 114. 113, which was what we talked about earlier, you'll be taking action on Thursday night.
I think what she's trying to ask is this different from this? And what you did was take this and summarize over here
That's
the
correct.
information.
The
So you just did
explanatory
everything.
notes are just, that's the exact same thing that comes later. It just explains why.
What's being
they're
eliminated?
making a change.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have a few more then.
Okay. What page?
Well, 241, discussions and limitation.
Towards the bottom, adopted.
Yeah, I'm trying to go on what was revised. No, that one was okay. I'm sorry, guys. On 244, where it's talking about meeting management, it's reworded. If you go to the current 242, it says public comments, and it's very brief. It's been changed to a one-liner. Under meeting management, when I'm reading everything in blue, it's not very specific like what we have been doing. It's not as explicit, saying 5 minutes or we'll have no more than 5 persons.
But I think that's our board policy. This is local. This is local, but I think what you're talking about is that board procedures that we have, which is different from. But I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think. Are you guys just trying to?
This is for BED local.
It's
on
yes.
page 244.
Yeah,
One of the
244.
things that came out of the recent legislative decisions is when you look at when we had public comment at all regular and special board meetings, the board shall permit public comment regardless of whether the topic is an item on the agenda posted with the notice of the meeting. When you look at how some districts have been doing audience to patron, they adjusted that, and so here it's stating that at regular board meetings, we shall permit public comment, but at special meetings, they can only talk about the items that are on the agenda. So if you were to have a special meeting and you had audience to patron, then a patron would only be able to discuss the items that are on that agenda. But before our regular board meetings, we have an opportunity for them to discuss anything they want, whether it's posted or not. That's one of the big differences that I see here on BED local.
For me, it was the meeting management, because it was very explicit. It said no presentation shall exceed 5 minutes.
So the next sentence is the key part there.
Where's
In
that?
how we had it, it said delegations of more than 5 persons shall appoint one person. We can no longer have delegations. So we can't collapse individuals. If we have 50 people show up that want to talk about it, then they each get to talk. Now, what we can do is that the board president or the board could determine if we've got 75 people showing up for the same topic, we can't group them, but we can condense or collapse the time from 5 minutes to 1 minute per speaker. So that's the big difference right there in terms of meeting management.
May I ask you, would that be something that would be made on the fly, or would be that something that we'd have to put into our policy that if we have a board meeting that more than X amount, that the board can say to lower the time limit?
I think you have the ability to do it in policy, so you just make the decision. If you had 50 people lined up out there.
So you can do it within the meeting. You don't have to. Okay. Because you never know when that's going to happen. All right.
Page 322. 322. It's revised. This is for BHBB local. for G&T. We're eliminating where we did have it as 100% of the students in kindergarten will be assessed for GT services. That will no longer be. Is there a different process to do this?
I'm looking for your.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
322.
Which
Under where it says the nomination.
Number 1.
Yes, number 1 in red.
Looking for my particular notes.
It says they'll schedule a session for parents.
It's requiring a district to, what it has done is provided more flexible language regarding the reassessments and transfer of students. So when you look at other revisions that are aligning, all of these revisions are aligning to the Texas state plan. And so when you look at the deletions throughout of the references, it's in regard to nominating students for the GT program. And then if you look on page 222, it'll go into some conversations in regard to explanatory notes in regard to some of the shifts that have happened within the GT program. Part of that broader language regarding the selection committee is there is no requirement to specify in policy whether the committee is established at the district or campus level. There is more flexible language regarding reassessments and transfers, and a new text to incorporate the requirement to consult parents about a student exiting the program. So now we have to ensure that before a student is exited from a GT program that we must, and that was best practice always, but according to the changes within the state plan, it is saying that you must. And then, again, it is providing the ability to incorporate the ability of an educator to appeal final decisions to the selection committee at that point.
Okay, so the key word is flexibility. They're trying
Yes.
to just make it more flexible where we had it this way, this way, this way.
Correct. And mimicking more of what the state plan came forward with.
Okay.
Yeah, we were doing what the state said, so now they're becoming.
Now they're catching up with
Yes.
this. And that clarifies a few other pages. Page 330, at the very top, it says the superintendent or the designee shall ensure that the district complies with. Why did they take out designee? If the superintendents would not be available, who would be?
You're talking about safe schools.
Safe
It's
schools
on
staff.
page
It's in a couple of other
330.
pages too. It eliminates the designee.
And I can't quote the specific policy name for you, but earlier in a previous policy, it affords the superintendent or his designee so that it doesn't have to be repeated throughout the entire manual.
So it doesn't have to be removed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I missed that part then. So
I'll go back and find a letter for you. But
no, I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now this is the one. Page 356.
Community relations.
Under prohibitions of tobacco, e-cigarettes, it's at the bottom, 1 and 2. Has this always been, especially number 2, the use, possession, or display of an otherwise prohibited weapon? It says no violation of this policy occurs when, and it says the use, possession, or display of an otherwise prohibited weapon takes place as part of a district-approved activity supervised by proper authorities.
Mm-hmm. There's no change in the policy from what we currently have there. So that would mean that it would have to be approved by the proper authorities to use that for number 2.
And then you jump up to that to number 1, where they took out loaded.
Mm-hmm. So the difference is that you could have a firearm on school property in a parking lot as long as it was not loaded, it was locked, and it was out of sight. And so now they've changed that to where it can be loaded, but it has to be locked and out of sight.
That bothers me.
That's coming from the state.
can't be in plain view. It doesn't have to be locked.
Right, that's what we're saying now.
That has been a change. That's been
That
a
was
change.
from the state this summer.
The vehicle would have to be locked.
The vehicle has to be locked, okay. And do you know why they deleted everything on 358 on? Is that something we don't need to know? 358?
State and local governmental authorities, law enforcement agencies.
What's the explanation of this?
Is this what some of the things you talked about the other day that were changing?
Yeah.
As soon as I find it.
Well, I was just wondering why it was deleted.
This exhibit has been deleted as list of offenses principals must report to local law enforcement authorities is included in GRAA legal.
They moved it.
They moved the policy.
Yeah, or reference it.
Why didn't they say that?
So why didn't they say that?
Whisper.
Yeah,
okay.
I think it's in the explanation, yeah.
So I understand, the confusion going back and forth, but I hope
All
that
right.
clarified some of it.
Is there anything else, or are we good?
She's not the one posted.
I've been watching. But no post-it notes have been harmed in this exercise.
You guys are wondering, when did she have time to go through all this? That doctor appointment that took 3 hours today.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. We're on
Are there
360.
any questions on tax collection report?
If I understood it, I would.
Payments for construction projects? We're on 368 right now. Bond update, which is on page 372.
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not sure.
On page 380, it gives the bond record and summary for 2017. Is there a way to add 2 columns to this going forward?
What would you like in the column?
Like to show if the project has been completed and whether it's over or under budget, so you can kind of see what's available.
She's 380. Is it on the next page when it was completed, right?
That particular page would reference that. It does not reference budget.
The budget, but yeah, 381 would tell you when it was completed, but.
Is there a way to add columns to this list? So it's just all right here, we don't have to flip back and forth?
Who, is that?
It'd be from us, but I'm afraid once we get all those columns, it's going to be very difficult to do it
on one sheet.
Read it. I mean, but we can sure try. One of the things that you're asking for, what were the 2 columns that you're asking?
Completed and budget.
Whether it's like trying to figure, because when y'all added this new page 400 of what's still left out from the other bond, it'd be nice to kind of see per item what's been completed, especially for the 2017, since y'all didn't add that, since it's still moving on moving parts. Just to kind of have a quick summary of what was under budget, what was over budget,
So
and what we still have as available funds.
Are you trying to figure out where the extra funding money came from? Which projects gave you the extra money?
Yes, but also like a current summary or status of what's available. So when we're talking about these other capital projects, knowing, we have this money here that we didn't use, and
Well, so
kind of having it more
but like
all
at the Austin Elementary, the roof, it was 1.9, but they committed, and then the balance. So
we don't know if it's a completed project or if they're still going to commit
Okay.
another $900,000 or whatnot to it. Does that
But
make
if
sense?
you turn the page, you'd see it's completed. But I see what you're saying. You just
It'd be
need
nice to
have it.
And then also if it was over or under budget, that kind of thing, because I still don't know.
Could you just do a different color for the completed? Would that help?
Yeah, I mean, you could just put a C next to dash C.
Yeah, and I know that Jill is going to be, because some of these are so, what the number that you see is not always the final number. She does a better job of explaining it. So,
That way way, if we know it's not completed, then it's still a moving number.
What I can do is, after we take the project for final payment, I can flag it that says this project has been completed and final approved by the board.
That'd be great.
Because many of these are already completed.
Right.
Okay. I think they're trying to make sure they don't have to do a full.
Just put a C next to it.
Okay. All right. The next one was the resource division.
Yes, School Resource Division update. Lamar Education Award Foundation update. Transportation update. You will actually get a report on Thursday for the stewardship report. A presentation, I should say.
That's this right there.
Parent involvement update.
I had a question on this one. Who are the parents, and we may not be able to say this in a public meeting, I don't know, but who under the parent liaisons, since there's 2 parent liaisons working to increase parent involvement at 2 total on campuses. The campuses are George Junior High and Terry High School. Who are the liaisons and how are they chosen?
It's a hired position, I believe, in Dr. Sagi.
The positions are posted on the district website. We do have applicants, and the campus principal and the committee would actually interview and make a recommendation for hire.
Do you know who they are now?
I don't have their names, no, sir.
So, but they've already been hired?
They have been hired,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So it's a paying position, it's not a volunteer position?
It is a paid position, correct.
And do they change yearly?
We have one at Terry High School right now that is new, and this is her first year.
Okay. So it continues. Okay.
So you'll send us their name?
Okay.
If I have a question about something that's pertaining to, like hiring the having volunteers as far as their background checks and that, do I wait until we do the stewardship thing next meeting?
Yeah.
Discuss that then?
That probably would be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Advertising on buses.
I think we should change the workshop to where we can ask questions and have discussion, as well as Thursday night, because I have some discussion points that I'm going to try to form a question about this for somebody.
Okay. What's the question?
Well, the question is our current print shop, and I know our graphic department is capable, but is our current print capabilities able to print the kind of materials that would go on a bus?
You would have to check. I know that we have the capabilities to print some adhesive type materials, but I would have to look into if our current printers can print the exact specifications for a bus. But we can find that out.
Also, in the item that you provided, it said that we could hire a media company to sell the ads, and that most media companies would charge a 30% fee. Is that correct?
There's 2 different models. Some districts choose to go outside and contract through that outside service. Others choose to do it inside. And in fact, a couple that we talked to started with it as an outside company and then later moved to doing it in-house. So there's 2 different models.
Do we currently have the correct department, maybe a business services department, and a person that would have the time to take this on, or would you recommend, if we were to approve this, that we would farm it out to an ad agency at the beginning?
So we actually looked at this, advertising in general, in 2013. And one of the things that we talked about at that time was how we've utilized our education foundation to be a conduit for a lot of business partners and other folks. And at that time, we had shared that this was 2013, but LEAP was making about $250,000 a year, which we felt was pretty sizable. And in the 5-6 years since then, you see in the report we had just a hair under $500,000 or $500,000 this year. And so we continue to see some success having all of our business partners funneled through the Education Foundation, which then in turn, all of those resources go right back to the classrooms and the students. In 2013, when we looked at this, the district generated $2.5 million in income from all outside revenues, excluding taxes, state funding, federal funding, and grants. But at the time, we talked about we had not traditionally had a major advertising department or interest. We do have advertising at the football stadium. So when you go out there, Ms. Nelson looks at different things for the scoreboard, et cetera. But between the scoreboard and then the success we've seen with our Education Foundation, that's primarily where we funnel things. And then Janice and I, the executive director there, has really been able to handle all of those different entities.
Where, and I've seen them on a couple of districts, two questions. How much would you have to charge so that it would make a profit for the district? And where would that money actually need to go? Into a general fund? Do we, as a board, allocate where we want the money to finally end up?
It's variable, and I can let these gentlemen speak specifically to the advertising. We reached out to a few districts in 2013 about that. Some were not willing to share their profits, others were. And at that time, we'd seen districts making anywhere between $20,000 to $100,000. And you can allocate that back to the general fund. You can allocate that back to a specific source. So the board and the district would have some flexibility there.
Yeah, but I remember when we were on the board, our biggest concern was taking money away from leave.
And the distraction.
Yeah.
As we dug into it, when you use an outside entity like an advertising company, they arrive at different pricing depending on where that advertising occurred on the bus and the size of the advertising. So there were some different amounts, and again, then typically they would reap 30% off the top of their profits, and the district would get the rest. So in terms of pricing, when you go with an outside entity, typically they have those amounts already fixed.
And I think we were also concerned about the distractions when we were talking back there.
That's a question.
Didn't
we worry
sorry.
about?
Yeah.
Come on. Well, that's the
one of the concerns we had, it was, if I remember correctly, I'm trying to figure out how to make this a question, that did it cause a concern for distraction, having the signs on the buses, on the road, people looking at that? Has anybody ever thought about that?
Well, I think that's one of our big concerns as well. The school bus has a very distinct design. It's got to be a certain color, the letters that say school bus in a certain size in a certain place, lights, in certain places that work a certain way. So everything about a school bus design is designed to make it noticeable as a school bus.
For safety reasons?
For safety reasons. And then when you put those advertisements on a bus, the advertisements by design are there to catch your eye and focus your attention there. And that's a fear for a lot of us, is that if that attention is focused, in that one particular spot, are they looking at the lights? Are they looking at kids that could be running towards the bus? So I think that's a very valid concern.
What color are school buses?
National School Bus Glossy Yellow.
Why?
Because that is a very noticeable color.
You said that the other districts reported an income of $20,000 to $100,000. Is that total per year?
Yeah,
correct. And again, that was from the last time we looked at this in 2013.
And they may have some updated.
I have another question. What happens when those advertisers decide that they don't want it? Whose responsibility is to tear it down, and then you've got your bus sign? How do you cover it? That type of thing.
That's a good question. If the model is with an outside company, the outside company manages that, and they also manage the removal of the advertising when it's over. If you do that in-house, obviously, then it becomes our responsibility, our staff, to do that.
And with that headache, how would you get it cleaned off and still get it back to a yellow bus?
Well, let me ask my fellow board members, has everybody seen a bus with current advertising on it?
Yes.
So it's not.
Well, it's very
No, this is in the discussion, this is a question.
Okay, but, yes, we, okay.
Could we get pictures of that so we know exactly what you're talking about?
There was two were provided.
Thank you. Look at that.
Say, I have not seen that. That's what he said. That's why he got an award.
A bus is not meant to be an advertising vehicle, it's a safety
I have a question.
for the children.
So this says that the Texas Department of Public Safety, that districts that have advertisements need to report the number of buses bearing advertisements and the number of accidents directly or indirectly involving school buses bearing advertisements. Do they then compile that into some sort of report? So is there data available that we can see whether this actually does cause a distraction and potentially more accidents?
I've not seen that report. If they have it, I know they asked for it, but I've not seen a report that shows how many school bus accidents there were in a year and how many of those had accidents on it in Texas.
Any other questions?
Mr. Hunt, I could see if we can find that information.
Yeah, that would be nice to get some more info.
And we could do some buses, wouldn't have to be all buses, correct, if we had a contract?
Right. The district can choose how many they want to advertise on. And of course, the number of buses we have in a fleet, it's probably going to depend on how many advertisers they can find for those buses as well.
Typically, the pricing is per bus.
Per bus, so we just do,
And then there has to be someone, probably within the district or within the media company, however the direction goes, probably within the district, there needs to be someone who approves those ads, because there's probably certain types of ads that wouldn't be appropriate for a school bus.
Because once we put it on our buses, it's like we're endorsing that product, just like, okay. Yeah. Okay. We've done.
For a smart tag. Any questions regarding smart tag ridership tracking program? And estimated project funds available. Madam.
Go ahead.
I appreciate this page being added. So, for example, like the 26, or 2006, I didn't realize we had money still left over from that bond. This is the first time that was brought to my attention that I've seen it. So I'm curious as to, like with the overage for Trailer Stadium, or for the trailer press box, is this something that we can use from 2006 to make up the difference?
I think we already decided which bond it came from. Which one did it come from?
2017.
I think it was from the 2014. It was from the 2014 bond.
It was from available funds, basically from Lindsay Elementary and the shell build out at Fulshear High School.
So the overage has already been covered with other available bond money?
Yes, ma'am.
So the $2 million that's on here is after that money was taken out?
Yes.
This is still.
Because it says, until a project is complete, only an estimate of remaining funds can be made. This is an estimate?
Yes, because we track all the projects from start to finish, and until Kevin and them actually close out a project, there's still movement. We have warranty periods and various things like that. Sometimes vendors present invoices late and various conditions like that. So until it's closed out, brought to you all for approval and all that, we wouldn't consider the funds available.
So this money is not really the money we have available. It's until
This is
not an officially closed out.
This is a conservative estimate of how much we think we're going to end up with, even though there are conditions. We've tried to account for different conditions that might exist right now. So we feel like these are, conservative estimates of what we have. I mean, for instance, you've got technology bond money and various projects that go on for a long period of time. And there's plans for those funds to be spent that we just haven't, finished the programs. Like computer refreshes, they go on for a while. So,
Well, and then where do we have still the last ag barn? That's in
14.
right.
14.
So
That's
would
not in this.
Correct.
Because we know we still need to use that.
Correct. We take the total amount of money we have and subtract out all those kinds of things.
So the key word is estimate.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms.
So I have a question. So I guess when you say we covered the trailer press rocks overage with those, why wouldn't we use the 2006 and close that out?
You could.
But why
could.
Because it probably wouldn't have been.
We had more funds in
It probably wouldn't have been
2014. There's really not. We could have used 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. We could have used either one. But I don't believe the number was $2.5 million, wasn't it?
But you used it from
So
two
I think we
different
were trying to use
It was 1.6.
one bond program instead of splitting between a couple. But we could have split between a couple.
There was more in the 2014 to cover
Right. We
it.
could cover the whole thing with one.
So you try to do it per bond versus just the money. So, for example, for the 2006 bond, is that money, are we hanging on to anything? Like you said, there could be something still hanging out there. Is there anything hanging out there that this might cover, that we're thinking we need this to cover, or is this literally available funds?
I would probably have to look at the projects actually in that bond to answer that question.
Okay.
But like I say, because it's a conservative estimate, this probably is truly available money.
Okay.
There are a few things you can do with available bond funds, and that is for the board to designate other uses or other projects, or you can pay down the bonds with it.
So is there a way to
Or you can use it for debt service, which is the same thing, basically.
Okay. Is there a way to get a little more detail on each of these? If it's, like you're saying, well, we're kind of waiting on this to make sure this closes out, no surprises. For those three, is there a way to get a little more detail on each of them so we can know if it's literally just available, and we can, if something comes up that we're discussing, we know that there are possible available funds that are not being sought to possibly cover something else?
We can.
Okay. That'd be great.
And we did, which bond did we use to finish up the baseball fields that time? Because I know we didn't we use some other bond money?
Was it 11?
Or not? We didn't.
I'm not sure.
But it was, I know,
It was
20.
either 6 or 11, I think.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the past, if we see we need extra money, we come to you and say, if we want to do this, where would it come from? And that's when they could usually come to us and say which one it could come from.
06. It was 06.
Okay. It's nice knowing we have a little slush fund. So.
Yeah, baseball, softball.
Well, I don't know about that. I would say that when you're efficient on the project and
Yes.
you have additional money left over, at least we're in a position to be having this conversation.
Right, because we're a lot luckier than a lot of other districts that fall short and then have to go into their general fund. Any other questions? Thank you.
Those are all of the information items.
Do we need to go to closed session? All right, so it's 8:53, and I will call our board workshop closed.